Welcome back to English Through Wisdom. I hope you learned something valuable from our last lesson. It is wonderful to have you here again today.
The morning Lena left, the whole village pretended not to watch, and every single person was watching. She was 17 years old, carrying one bag, one coat, and a letter she had not yet found the courage to open. An old woman by the well said just loud enough for Lena to hear it, "The world doesn't wait for girls like her." Lena kept walking. She did not know yet that in 10 years, that same old woman would be standing at her door, asking for her help. Years later, Lena finally understood the wisdom hidden inside that walk down the mountain. Welcome to English Through Wisdom. Here we learn English through powerful, true-to-life stories and timeless lessons drawn from real human experience. Today's story is about fear, courage, and the quiet decision that changes everything. Stay until the end, because the meaning behind this story might change how you see your own life. The village sat so high in the mountains that clouds sometimes settled inside it like guests who forgot to leave. It had one road in, one road out, and generations of families who had never needed the second one. Lena grew up in a house with a tin roof that sang when it rained, and a shelf of borrowed books she read so many times the spines had gone soft as cloth. She was the kind of child who asked questions nobody could answer. Why does the river never freeze at the bend near the old mill? Why do the birds that visit in autumn never come back the same way twice? Her father, Anton, would laugh and say she asked too many questions for a girl who had never left the valley. He did not say it unkindly. He said it the way a man says something he is quietly afraid of. Anton had buried his wife 6 years earlier, and since then he had raised Lena with a kind of careful, watchful love, the love of a man terrified of losing the only thing he had left. He kept her close. He wanted her to marry someone from a nearby farm, to build a life within sight of the mountain that had raised her. He believed, truly believed, that safety was the deepest form of love a father could give. Lena loved him. That was never the question. The question, the one she could not silence no matter how hard she tried, was whether love for her father meant she had to give up everything she had ever wondered about the world beyond the ridge. The night before she left, she found the letter. It had been hidden inside her mother's sewing box for 6 years, and Anton had never told her it existed, perhaps because reading it out loud would have made her leaving feel inevitable. The handwriting was small and slightly slanted, the way her mother used to write grocery lists in the kitchen. "My darling girl," it began. "If you are reading this, it means you are old enough to be afraid of your own life. I want you to know something I never had the courage to tell you directly. Do not let fear choose your future for you. Fear is a good advisor and a terrible master. Whatever you decide, decide it with your whole heart, and I will be proud of you from wherever I am." Lena read it 4 times before the candle burned low. She did not sleep that night. By sunrise, her bag was packed. The city she arrived in 3 days later did not care that she had walked down a mountain to reach it. It did not care about her mother's letter, or her father's tears, or the promise she had made to herself on the road. The city simply moved past her, fast and indifferent, the way rivers move past stones. She applied for work at 11 different places in her first week. A bakery, a printing shop, a small hotel near the train station. Each time, the answer was some version of the same sentence. "We need someone with experience, someone who already knows how things are done here." Lena had a village accent she could not hide, and a resume with nothing on it, and both of those things closed doors before she had finished opening her mouth. By the end of the second week, she had 11 coins left. She counted them twice on a park bench, as if counting them again might somehow make the number bigger. A woman selling roasted chestnuts nearby watched her count and said nothing, but later, without being asked, handed her a small paper bag of chestnuts and walked away before Lena could refuse. That night, sitting under a bridge with her back against cold stone, Lena allowed herself, for the first time, to seriously consider going home. Home had food. Home had her father's voice calling her in from the garden. Home had certainty, and certainty in that moment felt like the most beautiful word in any language. She took her mother's letter out and read the line again. Fear is a good advisor and a terrible master. She folded it, put it back inside her coat, and did not go home. The next morning, she noticed a small brick building she had walked past a dozen times without seeing, a community library with a hand-painted sign and a door that stuck slightly when you pushed it open. Inside, an elderly man named Mr. Voss was struggling to reach a stack of books on a high shelf. Lena, without thinking, reached up and steadied the stack before it fell. He thanked her, looked at her for a long moment, and asked if she needed work. Not paid work, he admitted honestly. Just help sorting donations 3 afternoons a week. Lena said yes before he had finished the sentence. It was not money. It was something else, something that mattered more in that moment. It was a reason to get up in the morning that had nothing to do with rejection. She kept showing up. She organized shelves, repaired torn pages with careful tape, and in the evenings when the library was empty, she read everything she could reach, teaching herself the kind of English and mathematics she had never had access to in the village school. Mr. Voss, who had spent 40 years as a teacher before retiring, began staying later than he needed to. He would sit across from her with a cup of tea going cold and ask her questions the way her father never had, questions that assumed she had good answers inside her. Months passed this way. Small kindnesses accumulated the way snow accumulates quietly, until one day you look outside and the whole landscape has changed. Mr. Voss introduced her to a woman running a regional education program for rural children, one struggling to design lessons that actually made sense to kids who had grown up the way Lena had grown up. In the interview, Lena did not have a diploma to show. What she had instead was something the woman had not seen in any other candidate that year, an intimate, lived understanding of exactly what it felt like to sit in a classroom wondering if the world outside the mountains was real. She got the position. She was good at it, better than good. She redesigned lesson plans so they spoke directly to children who had never seen a train, who measured distance by how many hills stood between 2 houses. Enrollment in the program's most remote villages doubled within a year. People who had once looked past her in hallways began asking for her opinion in meetings. She realized, somewhere in that first year of real, meaningful work, that the thing she had been most afraid of losing when she left home, her sense of belonging to somewhere, had never actually left her. It had simply changed shape. 10 years after the morning she walked down that mountain road, Lena returned. She did not arrive in a car with tinted windows or wearing clothes meant to announce her success. She arrived on foot, the same road, carrying a bag heavier now with books instead of clothes. Her father stood in the doorway of the same house with the singing tin roof, older, thinner, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for her. He did not ask why she had come back. He simply held her the way he had not been able to on the morning she left, because on that morning he had been too afraid to let himself. Later that year, with money she had saved and a small grant from the education program she now helped run, Lena opened a learning center at the edge of the village, in the old grain storehouse nobody had used in a decade. Children came to read, to ask questions, to borrow books that would follow them into whatever life they chose, whether that life stayed in the valley or walked down the same road Lena once walked. The old woman from the well, the one who had said the world doesn't wait for girls like her, was among the first to come, not for herself, but bringing her granddaughter by the hand. Anton stood at the back of the small opening ceremony, and when someone asked him if he was proud, he said quietly that letting his daughter walk away 10 years earlier had been the hardest decision of his life, and also, without question, the best one. Lena placed her mother's letter inside a glass case near the entrance of the learning center, where any child could read it. Not as a museum piece, but as a promise passed forward. On the final page of the guest book that first week, A different young girl, 11 years old, wrote a single sentence before running outside to look at the mountains. I wonder what's on the other side of them. The cycle quietly had begun again. There is a well-known Japanese proverb that fits this story closely. Nana korabi, ya oki, written chijuanbi bachiki. It translates literally to fall down 7 times, stand up 8. The pronunciation is roughly nana korobi, ya oki. This proverb has been part of Japanese language and culture for centuries and is often referenced in the context of resilience, particularly in martial arts and traditional theater, where the idea of rising one more time than you fall is treated less as a slogan and more as a practical philosophy for living. The number 7 and 8 are not meant to be counted literally. They represent the simple, unglamorous truth that setbacks will always slightly outnumber your victories along the way, and that the final count does not matter nearly as much as the decision to stand back up one more time than life knocks you down. In Lena's story, this idea shows up quietly, without being announced. It shows up when she counts 11 coins under a bridge and still does not go home. It shows up when she steadies a stack of falling books in a library she almost did not enter. Courage, in this story and in this proverb, is never presented as the absence of fear. It is presented as movement that continues despite fear. That distinction matters because it means courage is not a personality trait reserved for a rare few people. It is a decision available to anyone, on any ordinary morning, including yours. Think honestly for a moment about the last time fear made a decision for you instead of letting you make it yourself. Maybe it was a conversation you avoided, an opportunity you quietly let pass, a version of your life you decided was too risky to attempt. Have you ever judged someone the way the village judged Lena, assuming that leaving comfort behind was reckless rather than brave? Have you ever been on the other side, doubted by people who loved you, and had to decide whose voice you were going to trust, theirs or your own? What would you have done under that bridge, with 11 coins left and a warm bed a 3-day walk behind you? There is no wrong answer to that question, but sitting with it honestly tells you something true about where you currently stand in your own life. If this story reminded you of a decision you are facing right now, write it in the comments. Sometimes saying it out loud, even to strangers on the internet, is the first small act of courage that leads to the next one. Indifferent, meaning not caring about something or someone. Example, the city felt indifferent to her struggles. Resume, noun, meaning a document listing your work experience and skills. Example, she had an empty resume when she arrived in the city. Accumulate, meaning to gradually increase in amount over time. Example, small kindnesses accumulated until her life began to change. Steady, verb, meaning to stop something from shaking or falling. Example, she reached up to steady the falling books. Trembling, meaning shaking slightly, often from emotion or age. Example, his hands were trembling as he reached for her. Reluctant, meaning unwilling or hesitant to do something. Example, she was reluctant to open her mother's letter. Enrollment, meaning the number of people registered for a program or school. Example, enrollment in the program doubled within a year. Grant, noun, meaning money given for a specific purpose, often by an organization. Example, she used a small grant to open the learning center. Doubt, verb, meaning to feel uncertain about something. Example, the villagers doubted she would ever succeed. Inevitable, meaning certain to happen, impossible to avoid. Example, reading the letter made her leaving feel inevitable. Quietly, meaning in a calm or soft manner without drawing attention. Example, he admitted quietly that it had been the hardest decision of his life. Setback, meaning a problem that delays or interrupts progress. Example, every setback taught her something the last one had not. Repeat this paragraph aloud, slowly, focusing on rhythm and natural pauses. She took her mother's letter out and read the line again. Fear is a good advisor and a terrible master. She folded it, put it back inside her coat, and did not go home. The next morning, she noticed a small brick building she had walked past a dozen times without seeing. Lena never became rich. She never became famous. What she built instead was a room full of children who now believe the world outside their mountains is something they are allowed to wonder about. That is the quiet wisdom of Nana Korobi Yaoki. Courage does not promise you an easy path, it only promises you will keep walking. Keep learning English, keep discovering stories, and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.
If you enjoyed learning English through this ancient saying, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this wisdom today. Until next time, keep learning English and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.